Good night and welcome to Mindful Live 327. I'm your host Nathan Springer. Thank you for being here. Once you're on the inside, as per usual, hit that like button, double tap the screen over there. On TikTok, that's how you hit the like button. As many times as you want, double tap that screen. Just, get in there, work out those finger muscles, stretch them, stretch out those carpals and all of that good stuff. It is the 10th of January, into the double digits of the first month of 2024. Already the year is already zipping away. This January that wears long pants, that's a thing of the old. No month wears long pants anymore. We're just speeding on with it. It's just hurrying on. It seems like, we get into the end and somebody just kind of flipping through the pages a little faster than before. And talking about flipping through the pages, what going on with our TTPS? Apparently, our Trinidad and Tobago Police Service have the real bad men inside of the... I don't know how many of you know that little GIF, that little short video from, who was it? Who was that? Was that Ninja Man, I believe? Where, I think it's from an excerpt where he was talking about how many children he has. And he has a little clip where he's like, real bad man. And that's the Trinis. The Trinidad and Tobago Police Service apparently is staffed by those real bad men. Because looking at a little clip here coming out from, I believe it was Curep. I believe the clip was from Curep. Good night, Paul Duncan. I believe the clip was from Curep Junction, on the northern side of Curep Junction, it looks like there. I saw somewhere people were talking about that the guy who was recording is known to be a bull puller, a PH taxi driver, someone who works hired cars with their private vehicle. It's illegal, but nonetheless, you could give someone a ticket without acting the fool. And that seems to be precisely what happened there. I'm trying to see if I could pull up the video for those who would be looking at this over on the YouTube. See if I can find this over there. The video doesn't seem to want to play for some reason or the other, but I can describe it pretty clearly for those who haven't seen it. A guy is recording the police as apparently they're giving him a ticket, and the officer walks up to him and swats his phone, something looking like it may be spinning a couple 8 feet into the air and then falling on the ground. The man himself looks shocked for the first 2 seconds. And as I was saying, if you know Trini body language, if you know Trini interactions, there's more said in that than just throwing the phone out your hand. The officer didn't tell the man that, please don't record me. That's not what he said by that action. He said, please don't record me. And by the way, so and so and so and so you little boy. It was an insult too. That's an insult. As nearly every Trini man in the comments in the response is like, listen, I was swinging my hand. I was hitting that officer. But big man thing, the guy responded correctly. Call the officer dunce maybe if you have to, but don't rush in. If this officer, think about this for a moment, if this man is off of his rockers enough, his marbles are loose enough, his brain is shaking inside of the skull enough that in broad daylight, in his police uniform, he is going to swat your phone out of your hand. If that's the kind of brain shaking vibes this man has going on, what do you think is going to happen if you rush him? Judging by the man's character, would you be surprised if he pulls out his service revolver and offloads some on you? This man is evidently not... What was the corpus mentis? He isn't all functional, obviously. Something went on in this man's life that has him in a kind of edgy position. You don't know the marital or domestic situations that the man may be going through. He may be at the point to, throw it all away. So, brother man, those aren't the officers to just rush in. hopefully Tanti Ula will deal with him in the long run. But as disrespectful as it is, you have to hold your reflexes. You trust me, I understand. When I watch that video, the first thing that in your mind is, I'd have swing. I would have swing. I'm not sure I would have been able to catch myself in time. I feel like the swing might have happened before I realized that this is a mad police. You hit my phone out my hand and my hand already in mid motion, and I'm like, oh no, this is a mad police. Pop. I understand the sentiment, but you have to be able to hold those reflexes when we dealing with crazy people like we're dealing out here in Trinidad and Tobago. And as someone says, monkey does know which tree to climb, eh? I wouldn't doubt that had he pulled over a carload that seems like it was one of those number group fellas, and they pulled out their phone to record him, he wasn't hitting their phone out of their hand. White leather says they want you to swing, they provoke you to do such. Yep. But here's the problem with that. Now, that works really well when there are people with things to lose. I have a family. I have a home, you know. I don't want to be dragging on the ground and police on my back, riding my back, and eyeballing with a taser in my waist and all that. I have things to lose. So it works well. You put that kind of pressure on people with things to lose, and you could show off. You feel like a big man. You meet your outside woman and you let her know I's a real big man today. But when people have nothing to lose, those games start to go the other way. They go south really quickly. And I think the game that we're playing here in Trinidad and Tobago with some of the gangs, we're toying with some of that. We're toying with a lot of those things going south very quickly. The influence and power that these gangs are gaining, they're not just going to magically be undone. When you look over in Ecuador, I don't know how many of you are paying attention to what is happening in Ecuador. There are many things happening in Ecuador. It seems to be nearly like a partial coup to some extent. But on top of that, one of the triggers was Ecuador prisoners take guards hostage after drug lords escape. Ecuador's security forces are trying to re-establish order in at least 6 jails, where riots broke out on Monday. Inmates have reportedly taken a number of prison guards hostage and have threatened to kill them if soldiers are deployed to regain control of the penitentiaries. 4 police officers were also kidnapped after President Daniel Noboa declared a state of emergency. You see, that's the game that goes on with those gangs and gang power. They're not going to cede their power. And after you allow those gangs to build up and build up and build up, and then you want to arrest a gang leader and throw him into a deep dark hole, you're telling this gang leader you have nothing left to lose. If we reach the position, even we may not have reached as far as Ecuador yet, but in Trinidad and Tobago, if we're thinking about this, if right now, as we are right now, the position the gangs are in Trinidad right now, if a government was to make it seem to these gang leaders like they have nothing to lose, like arrest them, throw them in prison, not the kind of prison where they get to voice chat and video chat outside, no, real prison where that's it, you're locked off from everyone, that's all. And these men start to reach the nothing to lose point. I wonder what would happen in Trinidad and Tobago if we are already in a position where if these gangs decide that they have nothing to lose, the country would be under great stress. The gangs in Ecuador have announced, because the president announced a curfew along with a state of emergency, the gang said, okay, if it's a war you want, well, we are warring with you. And the gang is warring with the state, with civilians trapped in the middle. Mr. Speaker, like you forget, Trinidad is not a real place, so where is the real prison? Ain't that the thing? Ain't that the thing? We're toying with a dangerous thing here in Trinidad and Tobago. I don't think we know how scary that could get on a moment. But that's the police and that's crime. Moving away from that slightly to something that, you know, has some influence, has something to do with the other. I was reading an article. I don't know how many of you are paying attention to the number of murders that have been going on. It's kind of dizzying to keep up with it, but there was a murder right in the savannah. A young man who was doing some work building one of the sheds around the savannah there. Someone saw him there and they didn't like him for whatever reason and they killed him, murdered, right there and then. And maybe partially due to that, but with extension to do with other things, I saw an article coming out pertaining to that. BPTT cancels PAN space over security concerns. Citing insurmountable security concerns, BPTT has confirmed that it has decided not to move forward with plans for a proposed activity in the savannah as part of its support of PAN after a risk assessment. This is what I mean when I repeatedly say it's not that poverty causes crime, but crime causes poverty. How many people do you think would have made a day work? Maybe more than a day work, because an event like that very likely would have multiple days of preparation and at least one day of cleanup afterwards. That's work. Good work. How many pan men, pan women would have been playing and been paid to play? Because, you know, when we're talking BP, we're talking oil money here. That's gone because of crime. Take that and multiply that and expand it across the entire economy. And that's what crime causes. That's why when you're in a crime-ridden neighborhood, poverty just comes one step behind. And why I almost always say, when we're talking about finding ways to alleviate poverty and make things easier for people and one of the first steps, I think, is ridding the crime in a community. Making sure a community doesn't have that kind of permanent crime position. We're seeing it. Murder in the savannah. Well, hard luck for PAN in the savannah. And there wasn't there a blogger sometime last week or something like that talking about they don't think they're coming to Carnival on a whole because of the crime situation. And I mean, do you blame people really and truly? The crime situation in Trinidad is genuinely bad. It doesn't seem like the murderers have much concern for being caught. It's not a hide and seek dead of the night sneaking with all your guards up kind of thing anymore. It's a on site where I see you, I drop you. Lots of business closing because of extortion. Listen, to me, I find the east-west corridor right now seems to be a reckless place. I feel like even if I was living there, I might have been looking to move to central, south, or out of Trinidad. Because what would be happening if these gangs are getting braver and braver to murder people? Wouldn't they get braver and braver to do robberies and extortion? And in order to fund their murderous expeditions, they would need money. Where would they get the money? Robberies, extortions, etc. And the braver, more violent, more dangerous they get, and you see it evidenced by their murdering, can you imagine what goes on the blackmailing side? Listen, when these fellas roll up on another fella to murder him, they fully well understand that this fella has a group of other fellas that will murder me back for it. You as a businessman have nothing. You think they're afraid to try to demand money out of you? The hope is that you have the police as your gang. But if the police aren't your gang, if the police is their own gang, slapping phones out of hands like real bad men out there. So you don't have the police to back you up when they come knocking on your business though. What you gonna do? Can you separate drug-related crime and corruption to domestic violence to categorize crime? I'm pretty sure they do separate those crimes when they're categorizing crime. If you're asking me if I have that kind of stats in front of me right now, no, I don't. But the issue in Trinidad is that a lot of our murders, a lot of our violent crime is gang and drug related. A lot of it is drug and gang related. That's just the fact. It's not all domestic issues going on here. Good night, Otis. And you know, someone spoke there about domestic issues, and there was the funeral recently of the mother and daughter who were murdered allegedly by a close male companion of the daughter, a former close male companion of the daughter. And that was in the news recently. And you know, people speaking about laws to stop this and laws to help prevent it. And it's a true tragedy, not a tragedy. Tragedy makes it seem like it's something that just kind of happened. It was an atrocious act, a heinous act, really and truly. But sometimes when we ask for laws to protect against certain things, we have to understand that the thing itself was already illegal and someone did it. Murdering of the mother and daughter, that wasn't in the law. The man didn't follow the law when he murdered them. It's not like you're going to necessarily be able to create a law to make sure that the person doesn't break the law. So Nathan, if the police intelligence tells them who and where the gangs are, why aren't they acting? Okay. So, well, one, I wouldn't doubt there is corruption inside of the police service. I'll say that primarily out there. But beside that, the reality is in our judicial system, it's not necessarily what you know, it's what you could prove. So you could have the intelligence that tells you the whole structure of the gang, but can you prove it in a court of law? And if you cannot prove it, then what are you going to do about it? Weren't some guys from Beetham very recently freed of the charge of running a gang? They tried it. There were men in Trinidad and Tobago from the Beetham, well-known names, recently in court under the charges of running a gang. And the case was lost. So I mean, what you gonna do? Speaking of the domestic matters though, family lawyers check gun owners accused of domestic violence. All firearm users, license holders against whom domestic violence allegations have been made should be investigated, the Trinidad and Tobago Family Law Association has recommended. The association made the recommendation in a statement on January 10th. The TTFLA strongly recommends that all persons against whom allegations of domestic violence are made ought to be investigated to determine if they have a licensed firearm or any firearm in their possession, they said, and if so, the gun should be surrendered immediately as a precondition to applying for bail. And here's my problem with that. It's an allegation. I already believe that in this country, it's already too difficult for the average citizen to be able to defend themselves. I think it should be a right. It should be all right to be able to defend yourself. I agree with the American Constitution and their Second Amendment and having firearm ownership, arms ownership as a right. I agree with that. It makes sense. It makes sense on the personal security end. It makes sense on the government state-run end. It makes sense to me. And if you look at it like that, like a person has a right to be able to defend themselves, would you take that right away for an allegation? An allegation is someone said you do something. It's not proven. And you see, this is the difficulty with these kind of situations. I understand what they're saying. I understand what they're saying. I understand the point they're trying to make. You don't want it to be that someone has allegations of a domestic violence nature and you know that they're walking around with a gun. To violence much easier. That doesn't make sense. You would think logically we must do something to avoid that, and I understand. But if it's just an allegation, and you make it that an allegation is enough to throw those things out, then you make an allegation a punishment. You make punishing someone very easy. All I need to do to punish you is allege something. And you see, here's the thing with asking for laws sometimes when an incident happens, you know, those reactionary laws. In this case, with the man who allegedly murdered the mother and daughter, it's not just that he had his firearm user license just like that. The man was already brought up with breaking the conditions of the protection order. This is something way different than just an allegation. The judge made some kind of contorted adjustment to his order, saying he has to be on some base, and then further to that made an even further contortion on that, saying he could report to some auntie's house. It's not about the laws, because there were already laws to stop this. The man said allegedly in front of the police that he was going to murder the woman when he was already caught breaking the protection order. And then we have JPs giving this man bail afterwards. And then you're going to tell us the solution to this is that anyone who has a domestic violence allegation on them now shouldn't be able to defend themselves. No, the solution to this is probably fire some of your JPs. Stop having the JPs working so closely with law enforcement that law enforcement basically have them in their pockets. It is also recommended, this is the association recommending this, that any member of the protective services against whom domestic violence allegations have been made when appearing in court should have their superior officer present at the hearing and the court to direct that they should be prohibited from access to firearms at their workplaces. Again, does that make sense? An allegation means that law enforcement officers, protective services, cannot have access to their firearms. I don't know if that makes sense. I don't know if that makes sense. And it's kind of the same problem we were talking about with the gangs on a whole. On a whole, an allegation isn't proof of anything. An allegation is an allegation. Someone could allege that someone is a gang leader, but that's not proof enough to throw them in prison. I understand what you're saying. He could have done the same thing with a knife or ice pick. He could have. He could have. And it seemed like he had the intention. Are we a violent nation taking criminal elements away from the picture, I guess you mean there? I guess humans are a violent species. Life is violent. This earth in its present state is a violent planet. The earth is violence is a common thing, is a commonality amongst this planet. So Um, as far as nations go, if we're more violent than the average, I might say no. I might say compared to the average nation of human beings, I won't say we're necessarily so much above the average. It is what it is. And I think violence is kind of symptomatic of something. You know, people say violence is not the solution. Well, that's not always the case. Sometimes violence is the solution. And if you create a society where violence is the solution for many situations, you're going to end up with a violent society. If our society continues in the direction it's going, where the police seem like they can't handle the gangs, and then the gangs seem to take advantage of the regular citizens more and more and more, what's going to eventually happen is more and more regular citizens are going to start to become more capable of violence. It's the default. You're not just going to leave, you're not just going to have a whoever. You create the conditions. After her father's funeral, is Miss Pandey now in a better position to be politically potent? Maybe. The problem in Trinidad and Tobago is which lane would she get into? Trinidad and Tobago has two main electoral groups that vote for the PNM and vote for the UNC. Who are you going to look to take? From the PNM or the UNC? Or are you going to look to get the people who never vote to come out and vote and get them as your third constituent? I don't know. As our economic activities on the way down that. And the world is getting smaller. Communication is getting easier. So easy, just as simple as it is with the fact that communication is getting quicker and easier, makes trafficking of illegal merchandise a different thing. It's not what it once was, where you had to set it up with some kind of landline phone call and hope for the best. You could be connected 24/7 with whoever is your supplier. So, I mean, it's a whole different world we're experiencing right now. And it seems like our law enforcement or protective services, they aren't in the right frame to catch up with that. At least that's the way it seems on the outside. That ferry service looking possible. They have serious discussions now. Hopefully that helps. Yes, I was reading that also. Trinidad and Tobago, Guyana, Barbados discuss regional ferry. The governments of Guyana, Trinidad and Tobago, and Barbados are discussing the introduction of a ferry service to facilitate the transportation of passengers and cargo between the three countries. Guyana President Dr. Mohammed Irfan Ali made this disclosure on Friday while speaking at a contract signing event for a new US $35 million Mackenzie Wismar Bridge in the Upper Demerara Berbice district. In a Guyana newsroom report on Friday, Ali said a company to facilitate the establishment of this ferry was launched on Thursday. He gave no details about the company. Ali added that the three governments were still discussing the venture. We have to get this going and then we have to work on expanding. The Prime Minister and Works and Transport Minister Rohan Sinanan were unavailable for comment on Friday. Intra-regional transportation has been an issue that CARICOM has been dealing with for many years. I love that idea. Darius, this live ending just now over on Instagram there. When the live end and I go outside, do let me see it. That is all. Yeah, do you think the introduction of the capital punishment will lower the crime rate? Not necessarily. But yeah, that ferry service idea, love it. Love it, love it. I would like to travel the Caribbean reasonably priced. I think if the Caribbean was reasonably priced to go in between, especially Trinis, they would be everywhere all the time. That's what would happen. So open it up. Let we start moving, man. Let we start moving. Finally, some kind of globalization. The Caribbean begging for that for years. For me, RL, it's not globalization, that's regionalization. We're late on that move. We're already on the late side of that. Many regional blocks are kind of now breaking up. The European Union is having exits, and we're now trying to really solidify our thing. Smart guy, Darius. I don't think prices are set yet, Wide Leather. At least they haven't spoken about the prices being set yet. As for what you're saying there, Griffs, crime is as simple as giving licks in school. I don't think it's as simple as that. Now, I do think that the removal of capital punishment may have had a long-term effect. And maybe a sensible reintroduction. Maybe not. Maybe a change of the schooling structure to different types of schools might help. And then we talk about what measures of discipline we use. But just beating children, I think that horse is out of the stable well and gone. Just grabbing people, bad little children, and beating them now, I think you're going to get yourself in some trouble. I assume it may be around 500 TTA person return trip, just an estimate. That will be reasonable. That will be really reasonable. Look how I'm going to be touching down in Guyana right through. Guyana going to see me right through. Guyana has a lot of business opportunities. At that kind of rate, you could load up some nuts and nuts cake and Benny Ball and thing and go and sell it in Guyana with that kind of idea. I think that would help the Caribbean immensely if they do in fact lean into that. But you know, sometimes these leaders talk a lot and you see very little coming out. Parents could still share quarters at home if they wish. They don't need national corporal punishment law. That's true. That fare will take all day to take you to Barbados. Not a problem. And if the price is okay, take me all day, bro. Like, so what? If the price, let's say the price on a return trip to Guyana was $3,000. And the price on a return trip in the ferry is $500. That's $2,500 different. Do you make $2,500 in a day? If you're on that kind of level, well, maybe it would make sense, you know, you hop a flight still. But if you're not making $2,500 in a day, bro, take the ferry and chill. Like, you know, just relax. Watch the sights. See if you see a dolphin or two. Watch a movie. Take the time. Slow down. Alright. Are you yawning, people? I think that's a sign. That ferry ride go be vibes. And I believe once the governments open up that avenue, Matic boss, once the governments open up that avenue and start those lanes of passenger-based ferrying between the islands, the private boats would start to do it more. Don't be surprised some private operator watches it and sees the profitability because there is something actually running the route. They see the profitability and they join in. Maybe a luxury liner, a luxury ferry joins in for a more luxurious trip, or maybe a budget ferry joins in for a cheaper trip. Who knows? You know, we like boat cruise parties over here. For once we could actually have a cruise party. You know, when they talk about cruise party, sometimes they raise the anchor or from Hyatt, go and get it dizzy out right there in the bay and come back in the Gulf, sorry, and come back in. But who knows, maybe now they could actually take a party and party their way over to Guyana. It might be easier to travel to Barbados and back than traveling to Maracas and back. Ooh. Imagine that. People complaining about a day to Barbados, you know, backpack 5 days in a bus is the norm actually. Yeah. It is the norm. How quick you expect things to happen? I mean, I take a day waiting on a PTSD bus already. I didn't even have to cross waters. I just had to take a ticket. And my whole day, like a vapor, gone in the wind. So I mean, if I could wait a day on a PTSD bus to go down the main road, let me sit down in the boat. That sounds like premium vibes to me. A boat ride to Barbados, a boat ride to Guyana. And the boat ride to Guyana might actually be a pretty smooth boat ride too. Like the boat ride to Barbados, you'd get some open waters out there. A boat ride to Barbados, I think, would have a bit of a rough sailing. But down to Guyana, it's mostly sheltered waters. That's a nice calm run, man. I think I'll take that. This year may have good things in store yet. All right, any further questions or comments inside of the live? It's a short one tonight. We joined late. All right, if there are no further questions or comments, I'm going to dive out. Say good night to you people. Hey, I didn't know there's all this bacchanal going on TikTok, you know. Oh, I see Tanti saying some kind of real, you know, little off pitch things about her children. As you would expect, someone would report this to the authorities. The authorities do their job and come through. And this thing make a whole Twitter live. I mean, sorry, not Twitter. TikTok live. And people, what is this world coming to? What is this world coming to? TikTok, y'all are strange people. At Hotep, I'm trying to choose Hotep. I'm trying to choose my descriptors carefully here. Right? Allow me with the tanty. I wouldn't even give my view to these people. I feel like some of these people aren't 100, and maybe you should dial back the attention. Feeding them attention is sending them over the edge. Some of these people can't handle that attention. Jeez, man. I remember when someone in the Discord server sent me the original video. I'm listening to this like, well, why is this trend on the people's social media talking this? What's going on here? If I was a dictator, I believe some people shouldn't have access to the internet. Like, you know, there's a means test to see if you could get access to Gate now. I think there should be a means test, like, to test your intelligence. And if you know over a certain level, you can't get a phone with internet. You just stick to Nokia 1100 or something. The place is getting too strange, man. No, man. No. Stop it. Get some help. Get some help. Behave yourself. That is how it is today in this society, you know. To me, some of the worst people are the people, because I am sure all of those lives have a lot of people in it. There's a large number of people that will tune in to watch someone who is not right in their life, crash their life. They will endorse them into it. I've always said the social media has given a platform to many people who shouldn't have one. No, they shouldn't have one. They should have some help. Anyway, that's all I have for now, people. As Trini Hotep always says, be mindful, not mindless. And I will see you guys again for the next Mindful Live, which will be tomorrow evening. That's Thursday. That's Thursday Talks. Jump in and we'll be talking, discussing whatever is to be discussed tomorrow. Until then, people, hold it down. Stay well. Stay good. Don't come on the internet and tell the internet all your weird business. There are things that should be private, you know. Keep certain things private. All right, people, hold it down. I hope you're educated, informed, or entertained. I am Nathan Spring. I'll see you guys.